Well, apparently the Phillies don't want to have a serious conversation about Alec Bohm. Let's talk about it here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. This is Teddy Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Adam Jude of the Seattle Times dropped a banger of an article today with a ton of information about the Mariners trade talks so far. We're going to get into that. Plus, the professional yapper himself, John Morosi, says he's keeping an eye on the Mariners and a top free agent at the winter meetings next week. And since we have nothing better to talk about, screw it. We'll bite. We're also going to announce the winners of our latest giveaway towards the middle of the show, so be sure to stick around for that as well. But before we get into all that, shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do is click the link in the description of this episode to check that out. All right, so hey, remember yesterday's episode where Alec Bohm was my number one external third base option for the Mariners, because seems like he's going to get moved this winter for a pretty reasonable price, and there aren't many guys that I can say that about. Oops, I guess I was really wrong on that. I really missed the mark on that one, because today Adam Jude in his article on the Seattle Times said that the Mariners have talked about Bohm with the Phillies, and the Phillies proceeded to ask for Logan Gilbert or George Kirby for him. This is ridiculous, right? And it's very clear that in these negotiations, the Phillies are trying to use the Jonathan India Brady Singer deal as like a point of reference, which that's not even in the same universe. Brady Singer is not in the same universe as George Kirby or Logan Gilbert.
But Bohm is in the same universe as
Jonathan India. Yeah.
Which
so like
not saying much.
What are we doing here, man? Like, no, Dave Dombrowski doesn't want to have a serious conversation about Alec Bohm, clearly.
No, and, I think, obviously you start a negotiation, you always want to start on the high end and work your way towards the middle. You understand that. But the problem here is that you've set the opening salvo so high that it is literally a waste of Jerry and Justin's time to continue that conversation. Like, if I'm Jerry and Justin, I'm just crossing Bohm off the list until the Phillies come back to me and want to be like, hey, you want to have a serious conversation? And yeah, we were always willing to have a serious conversation. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, Dombrowski, starting off really high at a price he knows he has no shot of getting, like, that's fine. But that's also kind of the equivalent of asking if mayonnaise is an instrument. Like, you know what the answer is. The answer is going to be no, and you're just wasting everybody's time. So, yeah, Bohm, having a high asking price. And unfortunately, guys, I'm going to break some bad news for you here. It's still early in the offseason. So him having a high asking price is fine, whatever, but you still have to be somewhere in the realm of reality, right? Like, you still have to be willing to at least have a serious conversation. And what you're saying when I say, hey, what's Alec Bohm? And you're like, oh, we want Kirby or Gilbert for him, is like, oh, you don't want to trade Alec Bohm. Okay, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for wasting your time. Like, that's it. So, on the one hand, it's like, yeah, the Phillies, they're starting high, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, it's like, yeah, you know what? The Mariners have kind of walked themselves back into this situation. But on the most important hand, we should be like ripping the Phillies apart for having the audacity to propose such an idiotic trade. Like, there's just no way around it. Like, this is like some of the stuff we see from like that random Orioles fan who was like, could you get Bryce Miller for Ryan Mountcastle? This is on the same level.
Yeah.
It is that bad. This
is worse. This is worse. Because look, Alec Bohm,
fan fiction Friday type of stuff here.
Alec Bohm was basically a fringe everyday player by F4 standards before this year. Then he was a 3.5 win player.
Below average.
which really good year, 3.5 win player. That's awesome. For a third baseman, especially in today's day and age, and how bad third base is just across Major League Baseball, like we've talked about. But also, last year he got off to an incredibly hot start, and then he was a 96 WRC plus from May onward. Talking about a guy that was below league average for the majority of the season. That's not worth Cy Young contenders. What are we doing here?
Right, and again, not to mention, we could sit here and talk about like, the Mariners don't have a lot of leverage in these talks. Neither do the Phillies. They benched Bohm in the playoffs. They've made it very clear that they don't want him around. And they've even kind of leaked that, there's some clubhouse stuff going on with Bohm. He just doesn't gel very well in our clubhouse.
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't have leverage either.
Yeah.
So to sit here and act like you have all the right in the world to ask for a Cy Young caliber pitcher with more years of club control, mind you, than your below average everyday third baseman, unless you just think 2024 is the gospel on him. You know what I like about George Kirby and Logan Gilbert? They've had years like they've just had before. You're not banking on them to do something they haven't done yet. Like, no, you know who they are. And we don't know who Alec Bohm is, but if you had to lay a bet, he's probably closer to who he was in 2022 and 2023, especially since most of the upgrades in his WAR statistics come from defensive metrics, which we know are totally unreliable in small one-year sample sizes.
Yeah.
So it's absurd. It is absolutely absurd. Like, Dombrowski should be dragged over the coals for this. Like, it's absolutely insane, and it's silly. And it's not, and like you said, it's not a serious conversation. Like,
it's not.
We're clearly not even like, you're not even trying to have a conversation with us. That's fine. We're going to move on. Like, I would rather have Ramon Urias than Alec Bohm. Very similar players. I'd rather have him because he's not going to cost. I mean, the Orioles don't even have the nerve. They wouldn't have the nerve to ask for that for Ramon Urias.
Mm.
I'll go get Willie Castro on a 1-year deal. The Twins are not going to ask for, like, no, it's absurd. So on the one hand, it's like, you can't blame them for asking. I can, because you're wasting time.
I mean, like, look, I get it. Like, the Mariners don't have a clear in-house option at third base. They don't have a real option. And teams know that they're not going to go out in free agency inside of third baseman. One, because there aren't many options to sign. And two, because obviously we know the story about Mariners and spinning. But Dave Dombrowski just blew in from stupid town if he thinks that he can get Logan Gilbert or George Kirby for Alec Bohm.
Yeah, and I don't think Dombrowski is stupid. So
yeah.
This is obviously a let's see how desperate you are thing. And the Mariners saying, like, no, we'd rather roll with Dylan Moore at third base and Ryan Bliss at second base than give up Logan Gilbert for your 1.5 win third baseman. Screw you. And like I said, if you're Jerry and you're Justin, there's literally no reason to continue this conversation right now. None. Because if that's the starting point, you're not interested in having a serious conversation. We're going to look elsewhere because we do need to find a third baseman. But you know what? For a 1.5 player, I can go sign Ahmad Rosario and ask him to play third base for $3 million. And is that as good as Alec Bohm? Honestly, might be. Like, you can't say it's definitely not going to be. And I get to keep Logan Gilbert. Oh, no brainer. So when you're ready to have a serious conversation, you give us a call. But I'm not pursuing this angle anymore because you're not willing to have, like, a real discussion. Now, to be fair, for all we know, this characterization is a bit off, and it's like, hey, would you be willing to trade Gilbert or Kirby in a package that includes Bohm or any of that? And the Mariners just like, no, we're not trading Kirby or Gilbert, blah, blah, blah. So maybe that was the tone of the talks or whatever. Or maybe it was just mentioned, like, I don't suppose you, like, we don't know exactly how.
But I could also see it considering how limited the third base options are, considering that Bohm, you can frame it as he's coming off of a 3.5 win season. He's a young player that has full years of club control, yada, 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 yada. Right. That
it's a little tough to buy that from the Phillies when they've literally made it abundantly clear they want this dude off their roster.
Yeah.
Like, they're not even trying to hide that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, take your, like, oh, we have leverage talk and stuff it, because you don't, because we know this guy's not going to be on your roster in April one way or another. So yeah, it's all just a little absurd. But again, we're reading into, like, out of context. Well, not you kind of out of context quotes about a situation that somebody's privy to, but may not have had direct dialogue in. Blah blah blah. So you want to give a guy like Dombrowski, who's a Hall of Fame executive, you want to give him, more credit than this. But based on the information we have, it is laughably stupid that he would even waste anybody's time with this asking price.
Yeah. So in Jude's article, Bohm wasn't the only player mentioned that the Mariners have had talks about. We'll get into the other guy that they talked about in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, so let's keep on talking about this Adam Jude article that dropped today on the Seattle Times. We just talked about the Alec Bohm stuff and that ridiculous asking price from the Phillies. Now let's talk about Nico Hoerner, who's someone that we've talked about a lot as well. Along with Bohm, the Mariners have apparently had preliminary talks with the Cubs about Hoerner, and the Cubs apparently want an established major leaguer in return for their second baseman. Do the Mariners have that? What does that mean? What do you make of that?
It's a little tough to say because, established major leaguer, it's like, okay, well, you want a bullpen arm, you want an outfielder, you want an infielder. Doesn't make sense really to be an infielder, so we can probably eliminate that. But you want a starter, reliever, outfielder.
And looking at their roster right now, do they even want an outfielder?
Yeah, I mean, the outfield's pretty jam-packed, and, the
because
infield...
They have Crow Armstrong, they have Happ, they have Suzuki, they have Bellinger.
Mm-hmm. They're trying to trade Bellinger, but, good luck to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like, I mean, they just signed Drew Smiley, but they could probably use another starter. But, again, you're not trading Gilbert or Kirby for 2 years of Hoerner, even though Hoerner is a significantly better player than Alec Bohm with a longer track record. So, that's out. So, it's like, are you talking bullpen? Are we talking Andres Munoz here? Because I think at some point you have to really strongly consider that, even though, again, at that point now I have to go out and I have to replace Munoz. But, do you want to replace a guy who's going to throw 60 innings, or do you want to try and find somebody who's going to get 600 plate appearances? So it's a little tough to say when they're just as vague as, an established big leaguer back. Would I trade Munoz for Hoerner straight up? Probably. I mean, I wish I didn't have to, but I probably have to consider that now. I'd like to have another high leverage reliever in my back pocket already. So maybe, maybe that's a Ryan Helsley type, like we've talked about in our offseason plan, or maybe it's a Pete Fairbanks type from the Rays or something like that.
Who's apparently going to get talked about a lot at the winter meetings. So,
right. So, we'll have to wait and see. But if it's we want an established major leaguer, it's okay, well, if it's not Luis Castillo or a bullpen arm, I don't know that the Mariners have that guy. So, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Again, what is an established major leaguer? Are the Cubs really interested in Gregory Santos as their established major leaguer? Then okay.
To me, this reads as we want Kirby or Gilbert.
Right. And it's just okay, cool. We'll take Hoerner, Matt Shaw, and what the hell Ian Happ.
Right.
Since we're just throwing out ridiculous nonsense, let's just start there. So yeah, it's a little tough to say. Again, it's so vague. We just want an established big leaguer. Technically Gregory Santos is an established big leaguer. Also an established big leaguer, Julio Rodriguez. You see the discrepancy there? So,
yeah. I mean, one name, but again, I don't, they would want an outfielder, but one name that I'm thinking about here is Luke Raley.
Yeah.
Could Luke Raley for Nico Hoerner make sense?
I mean, the Mariners are probably getting the better end of that bargain, and I love Luke Raley, but he's a platoon player.
Strong side platoon.
Right, and a good one, a really good
Yeah.
one too. Like,
Yeah.
but and he's making the league minimum, so that's a real bonus to you as well. Like, what's the Cubs' first base situation?
Michael Busch.
Yeah, so like the DH right now would be their outfield that they're rotating through. They still have Isaac Paredes. They're going to try and get Matt Shaw at bats. So yeah, Rayleigh just doesn't seem like a great fit, but he is the guy that like I look at and I go like, okay, established big leaguer, has some trade value. In theory, the Mariners can part with him. At that point they need to go get Luke Rayleigh type of bat. And that's not going to be cheap either, but they did find Luke Rayleigh for excess parts. So maybe they think they can do that again. So yeah, it's just really tough with Hoerner to like think about like an established big leaguer. And it's like, do you want the established big leaguer to like carry the package, or would you take like Cole Young and Gregory Santos? You know what I mean? Like what is how important is that established big leaguer? It's such a vague phrase that it's a little tough to parse, but we'll see. I feel really confident in saying that it's not going to be Kirby or Gilbert. They're not going to trade either of those guys for Nico Hoerner, not straight up.
It's not going to be Miller or Wu either.
No, nope. So that pretty much leaves Castillo, Munoz, Rayleigh, maybe Santos as kind of like.
Do they think Colin Snyder is an established big leaguer?
Yeah, and like he's probably about as established as Gregory Santos, if we want to be honest. So I would say probably not to either of those guys. So yeah, it's just a little hard when you say, they want an established big leaguer. You kind of look around what they're not trading Cal Raleigh.
Is this where Matt Brash comes in?
Possibly.
Yeah. Because again, when we saw that report with a very optimistic timeline about his return, that at least partly reads to me as like, hey, he's definitely going to be healthy by April. Haha, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
He's defying the laws of anatomy.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. That report to me was a little sus, even though it was coming from a local reporter. So I don't know. Maybe it's nothing, but I did kind of notice that and go, I wonder if they're trying to like sell teams on, Brash he's going to be ready to go. And like he's looking good in his rehab and all that stuff. Right. So,
which teams aren't going to fall for. Like they would have their own doctor look at the elbow and they would do all that. But what's interesting here, like, I think this is a fun thought experiment. Would you, Ty, and I guess everybody in the comments, if you want to chime in, would you rather trade Munoz or Brash?
Brash.
It's just interesting because both have 4 years of club control left. And Munoz
but I don't know what Brash is going to look like coming off of TJ.
Munoz is making $3 million, then 6, then 8, then 10.
Yeah.
And Brash might be on a similar timeline, but he's a year behind. So it's like, in 2025, you'd much rather have Munoz, I would think, with Brash coming off the Tommy John. But Munoz got nicked up this year. He's got his own history of Tommy John. He got used a big workload on him. Sure. Yeah. So 2026 beyond, I think Brash might be the answer. That you'd rather keep Brash. It's pretty interesting. Like, how heavily do we want to weigh 2025? That's an interesting. Like, would you rather assume it's just 1-for-1, Munoz or Brash, straight up for Hoerner? Which one would you rather do? Are you doing either of them?
I would do Brash for Hoerner. Absolutely.
I'd probably do either.
Because again, I just don't know. Well, yeah, like in a vacuum, I would do either. And look, I trust them to go get a high leverage reliever more than I trust them to go find another second baseman that's like,
even though they already really need another high leverage reliever. So they'd have to get 2, but
because there's questions around Brash and who he is going to be post TJ and all that stuff. Even though that Tommy John isn't as much of a death knell as it used to be, it feels like.
And obviously the bounce back time for relievers is a little bit less because they don't have as big of a workload. They don't have to ramp up nearly as much. But
also with Brash, it's still going to be a violent delivery. Does he hurt the elbow again? There's
a lot of torque he's put on
that
elbow to throw those sweepers and the sliders and all that stuff.
So you also have to think about that. So if the Cubs would want to do Brash for Hoerner, maybe there's like a couple other pieces involved, whatever. Yeah, I would do that. Munoz, I'm a bit more hesitant on just because, again, I already need a high leverage guy on top of Munoz. Now, essentially, I need 2 high leverage guys if I trade Munoz. I think I feel good about them getting 1. There's quite a few options out there for them to get 1 of those guys, but can they get 2 in the same offseason? Probably not.
No,
at that point, I feel like the bullpen is incomplete. Maybe not a problem, but incomplete.
Sure, you're counting or you're hoping on like Garcia or Cranton or a waiver claim. Like you're hoping you find another Colin Snyder on top of hoping Colin Snyder can do what he did last year or something.
He continues that. Or like, Santos is actually the guy that you thought you were acquiring, et cetera.
Right. So, there are more like paths to having that really good bullpen than there are paths to having a really good second base or infield or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why you're willing to take that shot, but it's definitely not a no-brainer. Like there should be some hesitation of like, but you have to give up something to get something. And again, if Brash, who I'm not really counting on in 2025 anyways, if that's the guy that makes this deal go, then fine. And like I said, if they're holding out and it has to be Munoz, I'd probably try and get a little something extra back from Chicago. Or maybe not even extra. Maybe it's like, okay, well, how about we also include this prospect swap and that'll make me feel like blah, blah, blah. Maybe you get a bullpen arm from Chicago as part of the deal as well. So yeah, I think that's interesting. Let us know. Would you rather trade Brash or Munoz? I think for 2025, you'd rather have Munoz. Beyond that, pretty interesting. They're both going to be free agents. Well, I mean, Munoz has opt-outs and stuff like that in his deal, but you get the point. Yeah. 4 years of club control on both guys.
All right, so before we talk a little bit about Christian Walker, let's announce our winners for the giveaway. So our first winner is Karsten Moan 4245, who left this comment. Second winner, Zach Gonzalez, great last name. And our third winner, just_Lions. So the 3 of you haven't won anything just yet. We are going to spin the wheel to determine what you're going to get, which tier of the giveaway you are going to walk away with. So because we have the 3 of you on the wheel here, first, we're going to give away the grand prize of the 3 tiers that we hit over the course of our giveaway. And that's the signed Mike Cameron card and the $25 gift card to Simply Seattle. So let's spin the wheel. Whoever it lands on, you're walking away with a Cammy card and a $25 gift card to Simply Seattle. So Carson Moan, 4245, you are walking away with the $25 Simply Seattle gift card and the signed Mike Cameron card. To claim your prize, just email us at lockedonmariners@gmail.com. We'll also leave this in the comments below. And then we'll let you know. We have like a verification process that we typically do with our giveaways that we'll tell you all about, so you're able to claim your prize. All right, so we're taking Carson off of here. Now it's down to Zach and Just Lions. Whoever this lands on is walking away with the Andres Munoz signed card. Whoever it doesn't land on is walking away with the Mitch Haniger signed card. Spin the wheel.
All right.
Zach Gonzalez, you win the signed Andres Munoz card, and Just Lines, you are walking away with the Mitch Haniger signed card. So congratulations to our winners. Thank you guys so much for entering our giveaway. I think we're going to do another giveaway fairly soon, for sure, at some point over the course of the offseason. So this won't be your only opportunity to win some stuff from us. So be sure to stay glued to our channels, and we will be sure to announce something. So there we have it, our winners for the giveaway. So now let's get back into our show here, our last segment of the day. Again, we don't have a lot to talk about, so we're going to bite. The professional yapper himself, Jon Morosi, got on MLB Network today and said that Christian Walker and the Mariners are a pairing that he's going to keep his eye on at the winter meetings next week. Ooh.
To his credit, Christian Walker would be a tremendous add
to
the Mariners, and
very
high on my personal big board, which does not
would be a way better solution at first base than Justin Turner or Carlos Santana, just from a pure baseball standpoint.
I mean, like leadership is cool, but Gold Glove defense and 30 home runs and like a 350 on base is even cooler. So
yeah.
So I would love for him to be accurate and for him to be right about this, and it would also mean that the Mariners seemingly have more money than we were led to believe over the last couple of weeks, which would also be great news as well. So I would like for him to be real. Big Christian Walker guy here. It's not. So I look forward to his tweet that Walker's on a plane boarded for Seattle and he's visiting and all that stuff. And in reality, he's just going to Driveline or something. Or taking a vacation in Seattle in the winter, as one often does. Cool story, John. I hope you're right. It'd be great if you were. You're not. But in John's defense, he didn't say he just said he's speculating. He was very clear that this is
he always does. He doesn't. Right. He's not sourced on this,
right? But it was not like he implied that he was sourced up on this. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I just think that's a fit that makes a lot of sense. And Andy's right. It does. It makes a ton of sense. If you ignore, what's the word? If you ignore
all the evidence that says that the Mariners are not going to spend that kind of money.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Essentially the words coming out of ownership's own mouth that they're not going to spend money on guys.
And if you ignore that, hey, they got a shot to sign Juan Soto this offseason too. I mean,
again, I hope John's right. He could really use a win. It's been a rough couple, year for Morosi.
Rough couple year.
I mean, I was gonna say months, but it's been a year now since.
The
Ohtani is on a plane to Toronto thing.
Yeah.
Which again, he was completely used by Ohtani's agent.
I do feel kind of bad for him in that regard.
I do, because he gets dumped on that, and it's Morosi is a bit of a yapper, but he is not a guy who has a reputation. He's not MLB Scoops. Okay. He's better than that.
Sure.
So he absolutely got used last year for the Ohtani thing, but obviously it's still, egg on his face. And then he has the whole, in the summer before, he just kept on Lars Nootbaar for Logan Gilbert makes so much sense, even though literally everybody was no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And so it's been a rough go for him over the last, year on a national stage, and probably over the last 18 months on a Mariners specific land. But one thing's pretty clear. If it's not coming from Rosenthal or Passan or one of the local beat guys, probably not coming from the Mariners.
So Jon Morosi, probably not accurate on this one. But hey, would love for him to prove me wrong. Would love for the Seattle Mariners organization to prove me wrong. In fact, I am on my hands and knees begging you to prove me wrong, please. Because the way things are shaping up right now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be very excited about this offseason. But if you sign Christian Walker, my mood will change very quickly.
It only takes one.
Yeah. And what do we always say? Could be fun.
You know what? I would go so bold as to say it would be fun.
Would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tidy Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tidy Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.